was your main takeout of the weekend there?
A few areas. I mean, we got well beaten in our midfield. Between the arcs, we were really poor at both winning the ball, which is obviously the most important thing, but then really average in transition, and we just didn't use the ball well. So they were the sort of the two takeouts of the game, and of areas, particularly the transition side, that we pride ourselves on, where we've just been able to win the ball in those scramble situations through the midfield between the arcs. We were very poor at.
Looked at times the ball movement you mentioned was like pretty static, stop-start. Is that due to their pressure?
Well, they certainly were able to play the game the way they wanted to, but the main element was just getting our hands on it around the footy, up in the midfield area between the arcs, getting our hands on it around there, and then everything else tends to flow. So off the back of that, your ball movement gets better, and but certainly just the basics of the game, getting your hand on it when the ball's in a scramble situation. Minus 35 in ground balls between the arcs, they beat us handsomely in that area.
And that sort of transferred to 47 inside 50s. You can't really expect to kick much.
Well, what it does is it doesn't give you the opportunities when you're going forward, when you're getting beaten so badly in that ground ball area, and doesn't give you the opportunities to go forward, have inside 50s, and puts pressure on your defenders, and that's what we saw.
How did everybody pull up from the weekend fitness-wise? Everyone all right?
I think everyone's okay. There's players that obviously, whether it's Lance or Ollie or Jonesy, a few players, Lordy, that would be better for that run and needed that. So there was a few players that got through, but they pulled up okay. So that's a good sign for us.
Did the last quarter encourage you though, just the way to finish?
Yeah, we played well for probably the first 10 minutes of the game. We got out of the blocks and played pretty well for that first 5 to 10 minutes, and then the last quarter showed us what we can do. But unfortunately, you just can't win games of football with 40 minutes of football. You've got to be able to be better at that, and particularly the basics of the game, and just getting your hand on the footy, being able to give ourselves an opportunity. We were just sorely lacking in that area for most of the game.
Is that one of the main things you sort of highlight this week? Because you obviously had some good patches, but it's got to be consistent pretty much.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we have to be better at it for longer. There's no tricks in this game. If you haven't got the ball in your hand, it's very hard to convert that in opportunities, and the opposition are going to convert that in opportunities more than you. So that's what stood out to us, and that's what we need to be better at.
Does that come down to are those intangibles like desire and intensity or whatever? Is there anything technical you can do? Or?
Well, we look at the technical part of the game all the time as well, but we reacted slowly, and when the ball left our area, we just were slow to get onto the footy. And when you react slowly, you let the opposition strike at the ball with more intent, and therefore they were able to get their game going, and we weren't. So when you have that slow reaction time, that does impact on your ability to be able to get onto those balls in that area between the arcs.
Can you attribute that to anything? Why, is there anything you can put your finger on as to why that was?
No, sometimes there's just not a black or white answer to those things, even though everyone's after it. It's just we just reacted slowly, and we talked about it. We tried to address it. We didn't improve it until the last quarter. It just took too long before we actually got some improvement in it, and sometimes that happens, and we need to improve it a bit quicker than that next time.
To adjust with the new rules, the kick-in rules and the setup at the bounce, and will you have to readjust again after looking at it on the weekend? And I suppose it includes the rotations as well.
Oh yeah, we've adjusted as all teams have in that regard, but the basics of just getting around the ground ball from midfield stoppages hasn't changed. There's no rule changes with that. That's got nothing to do with the rule changes. Ball ups and boundary throws are exactly the same as what they were last year. So there's no change with that, and we just got onto it very slowly in that part of the ground.
How important it was to get Lance into his training and all that kind of thing. Are you confident that he and most of those other guys you mentioned will be able to train Wednesday? Or?
Yeah, they won't do a lot this week because it's a 6-day turnaround. But what you're hoping is that they'll do some, and then they'll be able to go into an 8-day break and do more and build on that as the season progresses. So that's what the plan is. We know that the best laid plans can sometimes not go according to that, but that's what we want to do. He's pulled up well, so that's a good start.
How's Dan Menzel tracking? Sorry? How's Dan Menzel tracking?
Dan's okay. He hurt his groin last week, just on the final drill. So he gave his groin a little bit of a tweak, but it's only for a couple of weeks, and then he'll be back training. So A slight setback with his groin, but not too significant. He actually feels really good today.
When you envisage the earliest you'll get him back is?
We expect him to be back training within 2 weeks, and then a couple of weeks training after that before he plays.
It must be disappointing. You must be keen to get him and Buddy together sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we were, but we also knew when they both had their operations last year that if we got them back within the first month of the season, that'd be a real bonus. Well, Menz is probably on track, maybe week 5, even though he had the operation late. So he was ahead of schedule before his slight groin tweak last week, and Lance is definitely ahead of where we thought he'd be. So in the off season, those operations were significant operations. So we're thinking, as it's washed up, they're not in a bad situation.
Do you think that would that make, given Dan and Lance obviously had the limited preparations, would you consider giving him 2 or 3, maybe more games at a lower level before you bring him in, so you don't have a couple of guys?
It's always according to the player and what we think they can handle. Lance is actually, month of training is more than what he did for the entire home and away season last year before he played on the weekend. So he's actually ahead of schedule in that regard, in regards to his preparation. But everyone's different. You can't afford to have too many in that boat of just coming in doing limited amounts of games and training, and that's certainly something we'll discuss with Dan closer to the time when he's due to play.
Is Lance in good enough shape to get a few more minutes this week, or was it a couple of weeks before
he actually played longer minutes than what we anticipated. He actually played slightly over 90, which was a bit more than what we thought going in, but we've got to make sure that it's not just about the minutes, it's about how we play and that two-way transition that we need to be able to get that going, not just about longer minutes, and so that'll be what we look at this week.
Anyone else you might get back this week?
Ben Ronk's had a slight knock to his knee, but we're hoping that it'll be okay. So if he's able to train this week, if he's able to get through the training session on Wednesday, he'll be in with a chance. And so we'll look at the mixture of the team, what it looks like. I'm sort of halfway through the Crows' vision now, so what their team looks like will come into it as well.
Took that couple of great grabs early, but he didn't seem in the midfield as much from the TV anyway. Was he okay with the head knock and all that?
No, he was okay. He was fine. I mean, we thought that he could have, he was able to mark the ball early, and if we were able to give him some more chances, we would have been ideal. We put him in the midfield more in the second half because he wasn't getting much of the ball. We weren't getting much of the ball forward. So that's just how we thought. We were just hoping to get more of the footy inside 50 with that, and that's why he was staying there. We thought he had an advantage being able to mark it the way he was.
It was quite a low-scoring round, I think. John, have you got any thoughts as to why that was the case?
I just think everyone has these expectations at the start of the year that whether they're rule changes or what, the game's going to significantly change. It changes a little bit, but the reality is, you can't really make any great predictions until about round 7, 8. I always say you've got to let the season settle into it. At the moment, we're 1 round in and 3 games into a new system, so we need to sort of let it settle a bit. It'll find its level before we sort of describe whether it's gone up or down in scoring.
Well, there's been a bit of talk this year about the SCG surface, but there was also a bit of debate about Marvel Stadium on Saturday as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, I didn't get to talk to a lot of our players after the game about the surface. We were talking about other things, but not many of them, or I don't think any of them, described had much trouble with the surface, maybe being a little bit fraction hard, but that's about it. There's been a fair bit of work done at the SCG surface over the last few weeks, and a lot of turf replaced, and hopefully the centre wicket area stands up, and that's the challenge when you've got a wicket in the middle of a football ground during the winter, and we understand it's a cricket ground during the summer, but the reality is if it gets wet, it could be an issue slipping wise, but generally we've found it okay to this point. They've done an enormous amount of work on it.
Is there getting more work on it this week? Because I know there's an A-League game next week. Is there going to be more work on it this week as well?
Well, you'll have to. I've got the team to be able to look at, and I'm not quite a grounds person, so you might have to ask the curators what they're doing to it. But I know they've been working on it a lot, and last week when we trained on it was pretty good.
How's Kieran Jack tracking?
Yeah, Kieran Jack, Tommy McCartan played on the weekend, so both got through really well. So that's a good sign that both Kieran and Tommy got through. We're not sure where that sits them in regards to senior selection this week, whether they've done enough or not, and we'll talk about that during the week.
Are you surprised to see the Crows lose the way they did at the weekend?
Anything can happen in this game. You're fully aware of that. Anything can happen in this game. So, Hawthorn are a good team. So, you've got to play well against good teams.
Just on the ground, John, do you change your approach at all, player selections or the way you coach, given the amount of traffic and other teams playing on the surface at all?
Not usually, no. If we start to worry about that, we start to take our eye off the ball a bit. So, no.